The woman just accompanied another man to bask in the sun. She was strangled to death by her boyfriend. Because the global temperature rose to 100 degrees Celsius, humans exposed to the heat would mutate into monsters. Only Su Chen dared to move freely. It turns out he traveled back from the future. He knew that after the high temperatures a great flood would come. During that time the temperature would drop to normal for 24 hours. Taking advantage of this gap, he drove to the nearest university. As soon as he entered he encountered two scavengers. They threatened him to hand over all his supplies. Su Chen took out a chicken drumstick from his backpack, casually threw them on the ground. Survivors hadn't had proper food for 4 or 5 days. They rushed to grab it. However, Su Chen only teased them. Gently pulled a silk thread in his hand. The chicken leg returned to his hand. He raised his gun, sent the 3 of them to the afterlife. After finishing this small skirmish, he immediately went to the 3rd floor snake lab. Due to long periods without feeding, the snakes inside had mostly died. Only one king snake survived by devouring its own kind, but some had begun to mutate. 2 pairs of sharp horns grow on the head. This was Su Chen's target this time. In his previous life, after the Great Flood, this king cobra underwent evolution. It turned into a giant dragon-like creature. If he could tame it before then, it would become a powerful ally in the future. Just as he was about to approach, sounds of fighting came from outside the door. Through the door crack, found a woman fighting with a survivor with a gun. Although the woman was unarmed, her movements were extremely agile. In less than 10 seconds she took down several survivors. Su Chen didn't dare to be careless. He quietly crept behind her, pressed his gun to her head. Then he tied her to a chair. After questioning her, he learned she was the captain of a special forces team. She was originally stationed at a rescue point, but they were attacked by a flood. She had to evacuate with civilians. However, a few escaped prisoners had mixed in with the civilians. The fugitives were hiding in this school. She had come to rescue the hostages. She requested Su Chen's help, but Su Chen wasn't so merciful. Once the captain mentioned that the fugitives had looted a lot of supplies, Su Chen immediately changed his attitude. Saving people from water and fire is my duty, saying that he pulled out a sniper rifle that was over a meter long from his 40 centimeters backpack. Inside a classroom in the school, fugitives had set up a trap, waiting for the special forces to fall into it. However, when the door was opened, only Su Chen entered. He raised his right hand mimicking a gun gesture. He pointed at the crowd. "Don't move." The fugitives froze in place, terrified. What kind of technique is this? Only the fugitives quickly realized that there was a sniper outside. They ordered the curtains to be drawn. Meanwhile, on the rooftop of the neighboring building, the female captain had the sniper rifle aimed. When she lost her line of sight she panicked. She rushed towards the neighboring building, praying Su Chen would survive. But when she burst into the classroom, she found all the robbers had fallen. As for the supplies they had hoarded, they had already been collected into Su Chen's space. Then the 2 of them freed all the hostages. Unexpectedly, one of the hostages was an old acquaintance, Xiao Feng. Seeing that he was injured at the waist, Su Chen took out a box of anti-inflammatory medicine from his backpack. If the wound got infected he could easily mutate. After the disaster struck, medicine became the rarest resource. Su Chen wasn't acting out of the goodness of his heart, but because he remembered a general in the official organization from his past life. This general, known as Feng God, resembled Xiao Feng. Now sending him medicine was also an investment. Before leaving, he reminded them to move to higher ground. The extreme heat had accelerated the melting of glaciers. The seawater would soon flood the school. But a student suddenly interrupted Su Chen. "Why should we trust you? I think you're just trying to get rid of us and hoard the school's supplies for yourself. Also, do you have food in your bag? You should share it with everyone." Saying that, she tried to take the food. The female student looked like she had been deeply wronged. The female student ran downstairs in a fury. Su Chen couldn't be bothered with her. After saying goodbye to Xiao Feng he left the school. But shortly after he walked out the school gate, he was blocked by a giant crane. The one who kidnapped him was a man wearing steel braces. He had secretly seen Su Chen take the supplies. "Hand over all the supplies. I'll let the girl go." When Su Chen remained unmoved, Steel Teeth patted the shipping container behind the crane. Inside, dozens of sand serpents were hiding. They rushed out and tore the girl to pieces. However, Steel Teeth, who was closer to the sand serpents, was unharmed. "See that? This is the technology developed at our evolution base. As long as you take this powder, you won't be attacked by the monsters." Su Chen just laughed. "You burn the body of a sand serpent into ashes and eat it, and they'll treat you as one of their own. This is called technology?" Steel Teeth clearly didn't know this secret. He immediately began to gag in disgust. Meanwhile, After devouring the girl, the sand serpents charged at Su Chen. However, ever since he swallowed the crystal core of a sand serpent, he had long since transcended humanity. He took out twin daggers from his space. His figure disappeared like a ghost. In a flash, the blades cut through the air. All the sand serpents turned into bits and pieces. At that moment, Steel Teeth had just finished vomiting and didn't know what had just happened. Su Chen used his space transfer skill and appeared behind him. He grabbed Steel Teeth by the skull. With a sharp tug, he yanked his head and spine out. Not far away, the female captain had been drawn out by the sounds of the battle. She stood in shock, unable to move. Su Chen glanced at them before turning to leave. He took a detour back to the school lab. He had also prepared a large barrel of water. In his past life, the King Cobra evolved after the flood. Water must have been the trigger for its mutation. Once the King Cobra entered the water, its body began to undergo visible changes. A pair of horns grew from its head. A pair of wings also sprouted from its back. However, due to only having one barrel of water, its size was much smaller than in the past. Having just completed its mutation, it immediately fled out the window. Su Chen took out a knife from his space and chased after it. But he underestimated the hardness of the serpent's scales. The blade struck, and it snapped into two. "I'll give you one more chance. Either be my pet, or die." The King Cobra gave its answer through action. It coiled around Su Chen's body, opened its blood-red jaws and lunged at him. However, Su Chen exerted a little force and broke free from the coils. He grabbed the King Cobra's head with one hand. With a mighty jerk, he flipped the entire snake over. I've heard that snakes have very advanced nerves, and even if their heads are severed, they can still bite. How about this? With one hand gripping its upper jaw, he pulled forcefully. He tore it in half right then and there. Once you eat it, you'll gain part of the King Cobra's abilities. He hid in an empty tall building and began to devour it. When he woke up again, the Great Flood had already arrived. The awakened abilities were just what he needed, in addition to small snake scales growing on the surface of his skin, which greatly improved his defense. He also gained the ability to breathe underwater. His swimming speed was far superior to that of normal people. These were mostly auxiliary abilities, and they would soon lose their effect, because the next stage of the disaster was the continuous eruption of volcanoes. The volcanic ash covered the sky, causing global temperatures to plummet, entering the Ice Age. By then the monsters would become even stronger. After the Great Flood, several powerful forces emerged in Chengdu. They were the King Cobra women of the north, the Cannibal tribe of the south, the Rat King of the Science University, and the Skull Crusher Gao Chang from the east. Now Gao Chang and the King Cobra were both eliminated by him, and he left them with three choices. The female Corpse King's whereabouts were mysterious. A great flood broke out worldwide. All land was submerged. Humans who were soaked became water ghosts. This man, however, could move freely in the water. Turned out that he had swallowed a mutated snake skullstone. Not only could he breathe underwater, his skin grew snake scales, resisting the erosion of the floodwaters. But his living scent soon attracted hundreds and thousands of water ghosts. To avoid danger, Su Chen climbed up a utility pole. There were already 2 survivors up there. They claimed to be from the evolution base of the Science University. He recalled the previous life. How did it become a survivor base now? He decided to check it out, but he didn't go with the 2 survivors. He planned to return to Green City Hotel to bring Duan Ya along. After all, she was a top medical student. In a world without medicine production, she was a rare resource. However, as soon as he entered the hotel, he saw an unbelievable scene. The originally weak Duan Ya was actually carrying an axe to hack monsters. The monsters didn't dodge or avoid her. They let themselves be hacked to death by the axe. It turned out that during the days he was gone, after Duan Ya killed a second-dimensional creature, a crystal core exploded. This awakened a psychic ability. Though it wasn't very powerful, she could control the minds of some creatures. So Su Chen taught her some gun skills. When combined with her psychic ability, she became a formidable fighter. Once she became more proficient, if it was just Su Chen alone, swimming would actually be faster. The 2 of them finally arrived at the Science University. It had already been transformed into a makeshift fortress. As soon as they approached, the guards obviously gave 6 warnings. Su Chen quickly explained. He was here to join the evolution base. The guard on the fortress licked his lips. The girl could stay, but the man had to go back. Girl. Duan Ya then took out a plate of braised pork. The guard's eyes went wide. Since the disaster began, dimensional creatures had hardly eaten normal food. The dimensional creature quickly ordered his men to open the door. Once the boat docked, he snatched the braised pork. Greedily he began eating. Someone else had been there, they would have noticed that he wasn't eating braised pork at all. Instead he was eating the arm of a water ghost. It turned out that the guard had been controlled by Duan Ya's mental ability. Then Duan Ya controlled another guard to lead the way. They entered the evolution base. The guard team and the lower class were the only ones who could distribute food. Lower class citizens had to contribute to get food. As they were talking, a little girl suddenly fainted in front of them. She had obviously fainted from hunger. Duan Ya took out a small piece of bread. The girl immediately devoured it. An angry voice suddenly came from a distance. All food must be surrendered. Who allowed you to break the rules? The voice came from 3 enforcer guards. The girl was scared and immediately tried to hand over the bread. Duan Ya's eyes turned red. The next second, the 3 guards didn't care about the bread in the girl's hands. They grabbed the food and began devouring it greedily. You're new here, huh? Not bad. I won't throw you out this time, he said, ordering his men to bring out 2 people shackled with iron chains. I won't pursue this matter. Su Chen was very familiar with these 2 people. They were the survivors from the utility pole. It turned out that they had been sent out to search for food. Since they returned empty-handed, they were punished to test new drugs. They had been turned into this half-human half-monster state. Su Chen had some connection with them, so he didn't kill them. He just knocked them out. The enforcer guards were also shocked. Just then another voice sounded. Kid, not bad. I can give you contribution points. The so-called contribution points were what one used to exchange for food at the evolution base. Upon hearing this voice, all the guards were sweating cold. Su Chen looked up. The man was as fat as a pig. He must weigh at least 1,000 jin. He grabbed a spear nearby and killed the person. Then he looked at Su Chen with a grin. Perfect, there's a spot open. Want to take his place? And that girl over there. I can give you a can of luncheon meat every day. How about becoming my woman? It turned out that this fat man was the leader of the guards, the second in command of the evolution base. Of course Su Chen would never agree. He had already prepared to act. But the fat man didn't use force. He left a sentence saying, think it over, then turned and left. Just as Su Chen was puzzled, a young man walked over. He told him that the guard leader was no good. But due to the base's rules, he hadn't attacked directly. To survive you have to join the field team, saying that he led them to a building. This was the field team's camp. To Su Chen's surprise, he met a familiar face. It was his classmate Tian Yu. When Su Chen was in high school, he was often bullied. It was always Tian Yu who stood up for him. So the two had a very good relationship. After hearing about what happened earlier, Tian Yu immediately promised that there would be no problem, because he was the captain of the field team. His position was on par with the guard leader. But just as he finished speaking, one of his subordinates reported. The 2 survivors Su Chen saved and the little girl had been sent to the arena by the guard leader. It turned out that the 2 survivors and the girl were siblings. They had the girl face off against a mutated rat. Not even adults in peak condition could defeat such a rat. So the girl was quickly pinned to the ground and was about to be eaten. A figure descended from the sky. With a loud bang, a palm crushed the mutated rat's skull. Guard leader immediately burst into laughter. He ordered to open another gate. Behind the gate were even larger rats. His eyes glowed a blood-red hue. But Su Chen solved it in an instant with 3 daggers. The scene was immediately silent. A few seconds later, a young voice came from the broadcast. What excellent experimental material. Old Guo, bring him up here. No matter life or death. The order came from the leader of the evolution base. The fat man looked at Tian Yu and laughed loudly. I love seeing brothers turn on each other. Tian Yu lowered his head in shame. It turned out that the reason they survived the apocalypse was thanks to the serum developed by Boss Lu. This serum would drain their life. If they stopped the injections, they would die. Seeing that Tian Yu had already chosen sides, the fat man picked up 2 large iron hammers and smashed them towards Su Chen. But Tian Yu kicked them away. I've changed my mind, I'm standing by my brother. After all, my life's already in tatters. If I die, then I die. As he spoke, countless fists rained down on the fat man. But they found the fat man was unharmed. So the serum you were given was the level 1 version. But I'm using the level 2 version. With that, the 2 hammers fell. Although Tian Yu caught them with both hands, he was shaken and spat out blood. He was on the brink of losing. Su Chen finally moved. He kicked the hammers. With the momentum, the hammer handles went straight into the fat man's eyes. It pierced through his skull. Just when everyone thought the battle was over, a syringe shot into the fat man's body. The corpse that had been dead started to twitch.